Hello, everybody, and welcome to Evan Dub Productions' controversial Thot segment. Today we're going to be discussing remission versus cured, function labels and why they're essential, and how I cannot stand other people displaying their mental illness symptoms around me. And if you have questions, comments, concerns, or controversial thoughts of your own, please put them down below. Thank you.
We had a person who overcame addiction to drugs. His was a case in which he had been hospitalized for something. While he was in the hospital, he saw a dealer and was buying drugs from him while hooked up to IVs. And he managed to overcome that and live a healthier life. Okay, my addictions aren't that crippling. I'll take something if I feel crappy and I just want to sleep it off for a day, and then it'll knock me out for a few hours and I'll be mad about it. But his story was he was a lot more severe and he still managed to, his addiction is in remission, I guess is the polite way to phrase it. I kind of don't like in remission for mental things. It's like the preferred terminology, but I don't understand why you can't just say cured. What's wrong with being cured, right? Because I would like to be cured of my mental illnesses and such. People apparently get offended by that because it's oh well, we don't need a cure. You remember in X-Men 3, they're we don't need a cure, we don't need a cure. Okay, for mutants, depending on your mutation, maybe you don't need a cure. Storm, for example, was oh, there's nothing wrong with us because she's a weather goddess, right? But then you have Rogue, who kills somebody with a touch, or I think in the comic canon, she would take their ability and be able to use it, but if you weren't a mutant, she could kill you by touching you. Which, that's pretty horrifying if you care about other people's lives. So she wanted to have a cure so that she could live without needing to wear gloves and have her skin covered all the time. And then Storm's sitting there telling her, well, there's nothing to cure, there's nothing wrong with us. For me, I have many divergences, and I actually get a little bit offended when other people get offended when you bring up curing or function levels, because I think function level labels are actually pretty important. If you're a high functioning addict, for example, like me, you can go about your daily business, right? You can do your thing, but you still have this unhealthy coping mechanism, right? Whereas if you're a low functioning addict, it's gone beyond the point of using drugs to cope with unpleasant situations. It has gotten to the point where you need them to live and you can't focus on anything else in your life. Translating that over to, say, autism spectrum. Okay, there's a lot of people on the spectrum who get offended if you refer to them as high functioning. And the thing is, I used to work in a law firm where we would fill out paperwork for clients whose children needed to have guardianship as adults. So we would help the parents achieve that guardianship. In California, it's called conservatorship. You might have heard that term with the Britney Spears case. So we would use terms like high functioning and low functioning to determine what services they were eligible for, with things like disability services like San Andreas Regional Center in California. There's various regional centers in California where they will cater to people with certain divergences. They use functioning labels to determine how well you can function without assistance. Okay, so if you're high functioning, it means you can pretty much manage your own life. You might need a little bit of help. If you're low functioning, then that means that you need assistance with everything.
Okay, this is recorded after the fact, hence the lack of The Sims background music, but on the screen you see a picture from the Santa Clara County Courthouse. It is actually from the level of care document. We have no assistance is needed at this time. We have light housekeeping required, X amount of hours per week, personal caregivers required. There's a checkbox for 24-hour care, a checkbox for part-time, how many hours per day, assistance with daily living skills, how many hours per week, nursing care, meal prep, assistance with meds and whether you're assisting them with dispensing or setup only, assistance with ambulation, maximum standby or in-home hospice, and you can put other assistance 168 hours, which is the maximum, and you can say that this person requires 24-hour supervision for safety purposes.
The way that I came to understand it is if you can complain about function labels, then you're high functioning. Because otherwise, you're not going to be able to care. If your disability is so severe that you need help caring for every single aspect of yourself and are nonverbal, for example, and you can't toilet independently or put on your own clothes, then you're not going to give a shit about function labels. In order to care about that in the first place, you have to be at a certain level of functionability. Me, I was very proud to be considered high functioning because it means that I have some measure of independence in my own life. If I absolutely had no other choice, I could work full-time. I actually don't know if I can work full-time, but like when I was 17, that's what that meant, is that if I had no other option, I could pick up a job and work full-time, barring the fact that I had like no training, no skills, and no secondary language at the time. Circling back to this guy's story about having an addiction and being relatively high function. The way I got on this tangent in the first place is I was talking about how people get offended when you say such and such was cured rather than such and such was in remission. It's like, and then I went on a tangent about function labels. I mean, I'm fine with saying, oh, my depression has been cured or my depression is in remission. Like, either one of those for me is fine. For me, I have a personality disorder and I would much rather be considered cured if I'm no longer displaying symptoms. I don't want to think my personality disorder is in remission, because what does that mean? It means it could come back at any time, and I don't want it to. If I'm not suffering symptoms and if people around me aren't suffering from me having symptoms, which don't get bitchy with me, okay, that's a real thing. I cannot stand other people displaying symptoms around me. I would rather be considered cured, because that means that whatever happened in my brain, it's cleared up. It's not going to come.